Hi, welcome to the Lisa Saunders Show. I'm really excited because I'm having a guest that's come back because her story was so intriguing. What it was like to grow up in Utah, be a model, run a bed and breakfast. I have her come back because she just wrote a book about all of her adventures and life lessons in the Innkeeper's Diary. Pamela Collins, welcome.
Hi.
Hi. Tell us about your book. It just came out. I want to know. Now, this was a long process. You writing this book, right?
I started it when I was 20, and I'm not going to tell you how many years ago that was.
Well,
so
1
yes.
year ago, right?
2 years ago.
So you've been working on it through like notes to yourself and journal entries? Is that how you would mean you've been working on it for that long? Or?
Well, it started out just as a journal or a diary, and then it evolved over the years, and then people kept saying, you should write a book, you should write a book, you should write a book. And so I just stuck it in the back of my brain somewhere, and then the next thing I knew, I was writing a book. So.
Well, you had a lot of people intrigued because you've been through more things than most people, I think. And some of it really difficult. Some of it glamorous. Yes, you were a model and had a lot of clients, wearing designer clothes and shows and selling cars and all kinds of things, right? So that's all sounds glamorous, but there's a lot of your life that wasn't glamorous. You were in an abusive marriage. You've had another marriage where there was, he left you for a princess. I mean, some strange, unique things. You've had some very interesting spiritual experiences where you knew that God was watching and you were not alone. I don't know, maybe we'll just start from the beginning. As we talk, we'll show pictures, like picture number 1 shows you as a little girl. Your book talks about that you were made fun of. People were bullying you.
Yep, when I was little, I was made fun of. I had a large birthmark that covered most of this side of my face. I had to wear corrective shoes.
Could people tell they were corrective shoes?
Yeah, because they were really heavy.
Okay,
and,
really clunky.
I didn't have braces, but they were really clunky. And I had a Barbra Streisand nose. And so I got made fun of a lot, and the kids would chase me home and call me Bertha. My last name was Farley, but they'd call me Bertha Fartley, and then they'd chase me up trees and pull my, notebooks, and I'd have to, I'd be crying. But I think that's the main reason I wanted this story is because, and the main purpose of my story today is to let people know that we really do have more control over our lives than we think we do. And by control, I mean how some of life's circumstances that will happen to us, we can't avoid, but we can't avoid how it affects us.
Right.
And I think that's what the reason for my story. So like when I was made fun of, I would go home and we had a bathroom that had a mirror, the side mirror. And I'd stand in there and I'd put my finger over my nose to like see what I looked like without the big hump. And I'd pretend to be pretty, and then I'd rub lemon juice on my birthmark, and I just pretended to be pretty, and I wouldn't take on all that. And one day I just noticed my birthmark was gone, and I was in a car accident and my face went through the windshield, so they had to do surgery on my nose, and so that was really cool.
So did you say while you're fixing while you're doing my nose, can you make it a certain way, or it's just how it turned out?
Well, I was only 16, so I didn't know. I just said, please get rid of the big ugly hump. I think they got too much of it off, but anyway, it was gone. And then it just happened. So that started that. And then I also learned not to make fun of other people.
I know you personally. I see you socially. You own a bed and breakfast in New London. This is your second bed and breakfast, right? Now, this is called the Innkeeper's Diary. So you're still an innkeeper.
I'm still an innkeeper, yeah.
And I think you're so suited for it. I've gone to a couple of events, open house events at your bed and breakfast. And just the way I see you with people, it could be the janitor who doesn't speak any English, you honor them just as much as you would when you worked for Joe Kennedy. Was that you worked for him doing? What was that? You worked in their office.
I worked in the fundraising office, and we would plan parties and get donations.
So I just feel like from your book, I know that you can associate with absolutely anybody, and I feel like you really adhere to that scripture. Just honor everybody. Love everybody as you would want to be.
Exactly, yeah.
And I see that from your own life. So I wasn't surprised when I read in your book, and I see the people you invite to your party. You have such a wide range. Nobody is too high for you to invite. Nobody's too low for you to invite. And that's just one of the things I love about you. And I think it's one of the things people are going to love about your book when they see you looking like such a gorgeous model, and to know, but this hasn't always been your life. You know what it's like to be low. Even as a model, you had your really low points. You were raising 2 boys. Now we have another picture number 2. Now is that picture taken in Utah, and who is that?
That's why my book is so great. My family, God bless them, that's my Aunt Aggie, Uncle Ted, and Uncle Ernie. And do you notice the Napoleon Dynamite furniture in there?
Yeah, what is that, the 70s, I guess?
It was pretty much, that's the life that I had growing up. My aunt was a coal miner, my grandfather was a sheep herder, Uncle Ernie in the middle spoke to aliens. Uncle Ted owned mountain ranges, and they were just fun, crazy people. But that was part of it, is growing up in the country. Never would I have imagined that I would be living in a big city working for a Kennedy, or, for the court system in the Suffolk Superior Court, and meeting all the people that I did, and having dinner with movie stars. I mean, you just...
What, Sophia Loren, or who was it? You were...
Jacqueline Bisset.
Yeah. In Europe.
Yeah.
So I get to travel all over with you in your book to all these amazing life experiences. And throughout it all, though, you really had a faith in God. And the next picture we have, is that your father, or is that a priest? Tell me what's going on there.
Well, I had a lot of, I guess they're clairvoyant experiences, but I had a lot of stuff happen to me all through my life that I can't explain, on the other side of the solar system, but not your typical experiences. And so I wasn't particularly religious, but I did believe in God. And this actually happened just before my father died. I had joined a church after my son was cured of epilepsy. And I told my father that this man, he knew that my son had been cured from this priest's blessing. And then later on, I asked him if he would be baptized before he died. He didn't have long to live, and he was in a lot of pain. So the priest just happened to be going through town, and I asked him if he would stop at my father's, because at the time I was living in Boston. And he said he would, and because he was too fragile to baptize and submerge him in water, they did a baptism there in the living room. And if you notice the light streak coming through his head, at the moment he anointed him with the Holy Spirit, the whole energy changes in the room. And that's why I love this picture, because and what my book is about is that there is something going on in the world that people can't see, and a picture's worth 1,000 words, and that's why I like this picture. And right after this was done, he was in no more pain. He was happy. He wanted to die, and he said, "I wish I knew what I'd known my whole life. I would have always prayed for people." So I think prayer's very important. I know
that's why you prayed for your son. Myself having a child that died from epilepsy, you had a son with epilepsy, as if you didn't have enough on your plate as a single mom. And the seizures, you can't plan day to day, because you don't know what's going to happen. And you went and had him prayed for, and he was healed. You went to a Greek Orthodox church in Boston? Or?
Yeah, well, I was living in Salt Lake, and the poor little kid had grand mal seizures, and it terrified me. And all the medicine they gave him wasn't working.
And plus it can make you worse.
And it made him worse, and it was going to make him worse. And then we were at the doctor once a week because they had a new medicine they were testing. He had to have a lot of blood work done. So we were in the hospital once a week getting his blood drained. And then finally I just heard about this monk that lived in Boston who was known to heal people. So I called the priest, and said, I heard you can heal my son. And he said, oh, honey, only God heals, but I will read prayers over him. So I told my mom, and I flew out to Boston and found this amazing mansion in Brookline, Massachusetts, and I was scared to death. And here I've got my little boy, and we walked into this big, beautiful mansion, and there's all these monks with the long robes and the hair and the beard. And so he took him and prayed over him, and as soon as he had his vestments over his head, and I was kind of hiding in the corner because I didn't know. I was like, what have I done? And then I heard Chris let out a little giggle, and I just knew he was better. I just, you know how mothers' intuition? So I went home and I started weaning him off of the medicine.
And that takes a lot of courage, because that alone can...
Well,
if you're weaning it, that's not going to cause a seizure, because that's how they tell you to do it, to wean.
Yeah.
But, so I was very interested in that, and that's kind of your whole life story. You've had, I would say, some prayers answered dramatically and others not dramatically. And you've had to, okay, this isn't going the way I want it to go. So do you have any philosophy on that? When sometimes your prayers are answered dramatically, and you put them all in your book, it's great, because sometimes you have the craziest things happen, and some of them are you, like when you couldn't get a tenant out of your bed and breakfast. I just cracked up over that whole thing of you. Maybe I shouldn't tell it on the air, because just in case you get in trouble. So they should read the book, The Innkeeper's Diary. If you've ever had a tenant you can't get out of your house who's not paying rent, Pamela does have some interesting ways.
It worked.
Of getting rid of them, and it wasn't just prayer. It was her with a good friend.
Well, you have to have a sense of humor, and you have to have an imagination, and you have to have a really good friend. And Sally and I, and a glass of wine doesn't hurt.
Right, to help you. Now you also have more stories. Now you have a picture of animals. I love this. I don't want to skip ahead because I don't want it to get this, but here's your animals you have. So this is your farm, and you lived briefly in Utah when you were taking care of your mother, right? Is this when you had farm animals, and you dressed them up for your second wedding? You put, you talk about in your book, your second wedding, how all your animals were dressed for the wedding. How did you dress them for your wedding?
Well, I put wreaths, the bridesmaids, who was my husband's daughters, all the little girls had the wreaths with the ribbon. So I got ribbons made for that's Dally and Dolly Duck. And they were very best friends with Grunt, who is the pig. And then we had a wreath for him, but his neck was so fat, it kept slipping off. And then I don't have a picture of the horse, but we had their manes braided with ribbon because it was an outside wedding, and they were close by, to where everyone could see them. So they were attendees.
Well, when I read that, that's very you, because your bed and breakfast, I didn't get to see the interior of your one that you had in Massachusetts, but the one in New London is just stunning. You are so creative. People think you're creative because you dress your farm animals for a wedding. I've never seen such an eclectic. You take so many random things and put them together to tell stories. I think each room has a story of its own.
Well, the thing I think that's important for people to know is the world is so frightening now. It really is, and you have to find a place where you can go into your own world and create your own worlds, whether it be a room or your critters out in the backyard. And I also think it's important, like when my parents were dying and some of the experiences I've had, where when you're really sick and you're going into an unconscious state, it's really scary. A lot of things can happen in the brain. The brain is so fascinating to me, and the energy and the way it works. And so I think it's extremely important nowadays to be able to have a place where you meditate or you pray, where you can take yourself out of the world and go into yourself and find a
Well, my husband says
peaceful
you make
spot.
the world a more beautiful place. Because of just the things you do, that just you love beauty and you make things beautiful and you share it with your guests. And that's what I loved about when you go through all these difficult circumstances with 2 difficult marriages, and then you buy this bed and breakfast in Massachusetts after some of your work, and the guests that you have come in, some of them have had terrible problems, and you can relate to all of them and share the comfort that you've been comforted with. I feel like you have a real mission with your bed and breakfast. So not only just with your book, The Innkeeper's Diary, but just the way you relate to people. I feel like you can make anybody feel comfortable. Because I feel like you've been there.
Yeah, thank you. I've pretty much been there. If you can show the picture of my bed and breakfast in Boston.
Okay, that would be slide number 6. If you could we can get that up. Yeah, that's your bed and breakfast. Okay.
And this is why I believe in magic, because I was not a wealthy woman, and I always wanted a house on the ocean. And in the book, I talk about a professor that I had at the university when I was silly enough to think I wanted to be a doctor, a brain surgeon, and that didn't come to fruition. But I wanted to live on the water, and I wrote a wish list of all the things I wanted. And I was raised in the Rocky Mountains, but I wanted to live on the water. So I had on my wish list, one of the things was to someday have a home on the ocean. And I'll be darned, that was the home I ended up with on the ocean. And the thing that's so amazing about it is it was just outside of Boston Harbor, and you can't see it except for through the trees. Is the other side of my house was England. So if I went out my front door across to the beach, I could sit out there and look straight across, and it was magical. And it was 20 rooms, and I was bored, and my husband had died, and my son was in the Air Force, and I just had my other son, and it was the price I could afford, and I got it for, I think, $279,000. And it was a fixer-upper, but it gave me something to do, and you know how I like to create.
Right.
So it was just fun to just take time in the rooms and do what I wanted.
And that is how you deal with some of the stress in your life, right?
Oh,
Would
absolutely.
you say is just creating something, and in my mind, the way you create is by making rooms beautiful.
Well, or my yard,
yeah.
or a secret garden, or down in my basement we've got La La Land or the Speakeasy.
I call it the Speakeasy because that's what it looks like. Now, what you deal with, you start your book out with a very difficult scene of your abusive husband, and some people. How did you get out of that, and what do you recommend to other people that are in an abusive relationship?
Well, first of all, I think the reason I ended up in it is because I was made fun of as a child. So part of me felt like maybe I didn't deserve anything better, and something was wrong with me. And so I was attracting that kind of people, and I didn't realize that until after. But my husband was extremely abusive, and he tried to kill me.
And what he did, I don't want to talk about it on the air, but what he did to a pet of yours is frightening. And to think you lived like that.
It was bad. But then I realized that I didn't deserve to be treated like that. And I really have issue, and I know a lot of people and women who will be watching this who are into the 50 Shades of Grey thing. You know what? To them it's fantasy, but when people beat you and when people do horrible things to you, it's not fun, and it really isn't. And horror movies, and when you've seen devils and you've seen somebody who's been murdered, it's not funny and it's not cute, and I don't like it on TV. And I think it breeds the violence that we have today. I really do.
There's one scene of you going out to a photo shoot. If you could show slide number 5. This is of Pam's headshot. Was this you when you were, is the first time you were married, or where was this in your modeling career?
Actually, I wasn't planning on being a model. I was married to that husband, and I was in a hotel, and someone was looking for a model to do a brochure and asked me if I modeled, and I said no. Oh. And so they said, well, would you be interested in doing some test shots? And this was one of the test shots.
Okay.
And then that's how I ended up So I wasn't like I went out. Things just
So
happened.
Right. So this wasn't a career
Yeah.
you were seeking.
I
This
didn't know what I was seeking. I was just trying to be happy.
No, and that fell into your lap. Some things you had to work very hard for. Other things fell into your lap. Picture number 7 are your sons, and you talk about them. Now there they are, rocking out. Now are they both musically inclined?
No, Jonathan, the one with the beard, he's very, very good musician. And the reason he became a musician is he was smoking pot when we moved to this town. I think he was in the 8th grade, and I grounded him for 3 months because we had just moved to that house. And so I bought him a guitar, and he taught himself how to play the guitar. And he was very good at it. And then later on, the older son moved to Nashville, and then Jonathan went to live with him, and they started drinking and doing things that I just didn't like at all. And that's why, and that's another one of those miracles where I believe in the power of prayer. And I'll tell you what, they took me right to my knees many times.
Right, because you have absolutely no control over what they're doing, and so it was a matter of praying for them.
It was eating me alive. It was literally eating me alive. And I went into I have a little chapel in my house, and I went in and I prayed, and I just gave it to God. I said, I can't do this, it's killing me. And, into your hands I commit their souls, and I'll be darned. Right after that, they ended up getting a job. Somebody told my older son about these vitamins.
And you can show slide 8, where you can show it with her older son with the magazine in slide 8. Now that's because that's success, and that's him that they're writing about.
They did an art within like 6 months after I prayed. He's selling these things, and he's become like one of their top sellers. And it's stuff that rebalances the body and makes you feel better. It's all natural. People are getting off their pharmaceuticals because they're feeling so good. It gets rid of all the inflammation in the body, and he's done such a great job. He ended up in Success magazine. Then he got a hold of my other son and told him to start selling it, and now they're making 6-figure incomes within a year, and they're giving it to the poor. They
bought you a car.
They bought us a car for Christmas.
So here you went from having sons, not doing much of anything.
And
they found the perfect job for them.
Yeah,
and they're sharing.
And Jonathan's not drinking anymore. It's amazing. I was like, wow, God is so good.
Well, what I like, one of the things really that struck me the most about your book is you're good about keeping. You told a lot of stories about what you're in desperate need, and then how the answer comes. Like your son had a huge medical bill when he was in the hospital, and then suddenly, and you're out, I'm going to pay my debt. You're going to work it off, whether it takes you the rest of your life or not. But then you get a call that they're going to just write it off. I feel like you've had one answered prayer after another, and what's great is that you wrote them all down. So not only does it build up our faith as we're reading it, but I think for yourself, right? Don't you think everybody should really record the things when they've really been desperate and then had an answer, just so they can see a pattern? Okay, I'm not alone. Some things good do happen to me.
Oh, absolutely. I think you should write for a couple things. I know somebody in the Nice Girls group is talking about doing memoirs now. I think memoirs are really important, and I've noticed now that I just had a beautiful granddaughter that this is my life story. You watch Ancestry.com, and nobody, they see so-and-so came over from Ellis Island, and they were born on this date and died on this date, but you don't know what they went through. You don't know their struggle. You don't know their story. And I think, if nothing else, we need to create a website where people put their stories in. It doesn't need to be a big book, but their stories, their highlights of their life for future ancestors. Last night Josh Groban was on, and he found out all kinds of fascinating things about his family on Ancestry.com. So I think, for nothing else, people need to share that.
Oh, I'm a big believer in that. I teach my memoir writing classes, and for that reason, because people need to write it. First of all, I think it's very healing to your soul and organizes your thoughts and your life, and then your descendants or your friends are going to be interested. Because sometimes you don't feel like talking about all these things, but you're willing to write them down and have somebody read them. So did you find that process of writing them down and reliving them, was it really painful though?
Oh, it was hard. When I went into my abusive marriage, I started having panic attacks.
Yeah, because that was a difficult chapter. Now, we only have about 2 minutes left, Pam. So is there anything that people can, first of all, how can they get in touch with you? They can go to your Facebook page. You have a Facebook page for the Innkeeper's Diary.
I have a Facebook page. You can get the book at Amazon. It's doing very well. People are loving it. I've had people sending me cards now saying how much they loved it. It's not an easy read. It's a magical journey, and it's absolutely true.
I love I went on Amazon just to see some of the reviews you got, and I like this one. I don't know who wrote it. It says, it was so inspiring because of everything Pam went through with her family and is still a warrior and came out on top. This book could give so many people hope that they can live a happy life no matter what obstacle is thrown in their path. And I would have to say your book does give hope that no matter what, because like I said, some of it, that the difficult marriage was really awful, and you've overcome it. So
the main thing I want people to know is your thoughts are so important. When you're having a bad day, no matter what it is, there's always somebody going through something worse. It's like my husband worries, and I'm saying, honey, our kids, we are not walking through Afghanistan right now. We are not in Syria right now. You know, we don't have a child, thank God, in a hospital bed. There's so many people that have it worse, and then they complain. Oh, it snowed today. Well, it's beautiful. So go out and make snow angels. You know, we have control over that.
Yeah, that's a good thing for you. Go out and make snow angels should be your tagline. Well, anything else, Pamela? Your bed and breakfast is gorgeous. So hopefully people will come stay at your bed and breakfast if they come to visit you in New London, Connecticut. They can meet you. I hope you have copies available at your bed and breakfast.
I do. My handsome, in fact, we have a doctor and his wife staying there now, and his wife's just started reading it yesterday. So I don't know what they're going to think when they...
Right, they're going to find all out about their innkeeper.
Oh, man.
Well, people are going to find out what it's like to be an innkeeper when they read your book. So, Pam, thank you so much for coming on. And I'm so glad I know you personally, too.
Well, I'm glad I know you, too.
So I hope your Facebook page also tells people how they can go to stay at your inn also. I hope, if you don't have it on there, I hope you put that on there for the Innkeeper's Diary.
And there is a YouTube trailer of the book, too, that you can just YouTube, the Innkeeper's Diary.
Yeah.
And it gives my son did a really cool movie trailer about it. It probably should be a movie, not a book.
Yeah.
It really should.
Oh, your story should be a movie.
Yeah.
But anyway, so thank you so much for joining us on the Lisa Saunders Show, and I hope to see you next week.